Thank you so much, Andrea, and thank you all for taking time out of your day today to spend a few minutes with us. And we're going to just kind of jump into this. And as Andrea said, if you do have questions, you can certainly wait to the end, but they're just burning desire. Please put in your questions there, and we can answer them while we're talking about a particular subject. But yeah, we're going to talk about mystery shopping, and it's those two words can evoke some pretty powerful emotions. You think about mystery shopping, or your supervisor tells you you're going to get mystery shopped. Some of us might experience some fear, some anxiety, some nervousness, maybe anger, and like, why in the world are they mystery shopping? What am I doing wrong? And because of that, rarely do we have anybody that literally thanks us for mystery shopping. Every now and then it happens. We'll get an email or something. Oh, thank you so much. But rarely does that happen. And I think perhaps the reason why we kind of experience those emotions is because it's kind of perceived as that big brother, that eye in the sky program, and like, hey, we're trying to catch you doing something wrong. However, in our minds, the reason we established our company, mystery shopping is a tool used for professional development. So in this short webinar, we'll keep it as short as possible. The idea is to discuss just a few ideas that can maximize the benefit of the mystery shopping program if you're currently using it, or if you're thinking about using it. And like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to stop us. But saying all that, I kind of just want to get started off and with the question. So if you can pull up that question for us, Andrea, that'd be great.
Sure. We're going to start the poll. And the first question in today's poll is, how often do you currently mystery shop your team? So the first question is, how often do you currently mystery shop your team? And select one of the following: monthly, quarterly, yearly, or never. So we're going to give you a few minutes for all the attendees to vote for this poll, and we're almost done. Great, it looks like we have everybody, so I'm going to go ahead and close the poll, and it's very interesting. All right, poll is closed. I'm going to share the results. So how often do you currently mystery shop your team? The poll results, number one, never, 60%. So probably why everyone is here on this webinar today. Next up at 20% is yearly. 10% of our attendees do it quarterly, and 10% do it monthly. So those are the results, Mike. Now, what do you recommend for how often to mystery shop?
Yes, that's definitely a good question. There's a lot of factors that go into that. Number one, probably is just the budget. But for most of our clients, they're actually they're conducting quarterly mystery shops. And when we talk about quarterly, it depends on the type of shops that you're doing, because there's so many different ones. You've got phone shops during business hours, during nights, during weekends. You got web shops, in-person shops. So it depends on what the outcome is, what you're trying to accomplish. But like I said, most of our clients are doing a comprehensive on quarterly. We do have some that do them every other month, and we have some clients that actually do it on a monthly basis. So it really depends on what you're doing. Probably the most important question, and that might be, what are you doing with the results of those shops? And for those who are currently mystery shopping, that's a good question to ask yourself. For those who are thinking about the 60%, that would be something that you should think about if you're looking at implementing a mystery shopping program. The other side of that is that, and I'm not sure, but the way this question was phrased, you probably could have asked, maybe you're not the supervisor conducting the shop, maybe you're the one being shopped, but maybe that number of never would have been decreased a little bit. Saying all that, we're gonna move along, and here's just kind of the agenda we're going to follow. We're going to hit on these points at a very high level, about the right intent, why you should do it, preparing your team for shops, knowing what your outcomes, the coaching and the feedback session. That goes back to that question I asked, what are you doing with the results? And then, creating that action plan for success. One of the things, and as Andrea mentioned, we've conducted well over 100,000 shops in the senior living industry. We are specific an exclusive to the senior living industry when it comes to our mystery shops. And we've seen a number of trends that have developed over at least we've been in business for the past 10 years. And just want to go through some of these because I think this might at least put a spotlight and give a reason to that. Hey, why should we be mystery shopping? And I'm not saying that anybody on this webinar actually fits into these categories, but what I would do is if you are doing mystery shops, I would consider looking at the outcomes of these, and if you're thinking about it, certainly put these in your hip pocket. But these are a little bit scary numbers. But the average number of calls to reach a sales counselor is 3 to 4. I would tell you that that there's been times where it takes 10 to 15, and times where the shopper says, "Forget it, I'm not doing this anymore. Find somebody else to do it." In my mind, even 3 to 4 is a little bit too much. And then the percentage of closed questions asked, and what we found is that most questions, and if you think about it, most questions you ask are open-ended questions. But listening to all the mystery shops across the country, and even in North America, because we do Canada, 90% of the shops are closed-in questions. So it's those yes or no. Are you looking for 1 bedroom or 2? The other thing is percentage of sales counselors that talk at least 70% of the time. And we heard that whole 80-20 rule. Hey, listen 80% of the time, talk 20. Well, if 90% of the time we're asking those closed-in questions, we're not giving the prospect the opportunity to really expound, which is why it's such a good idea to learn that skill of taking those closed-in questions and turning to open-ended questions. But 70% of the counselors talked about 70% of the time. So only about 30% are really doing a better job than that 70% mark. The percentage of sales counselors asking for the close in the first 2 minutes, this kind of surprises me actually that it even happens. But maybe some of you have shopped your competitors and you've heard it, or maybe you've done it yourself. But when a prospect is called in and said, I'd like some information about your community, and you talk for about a minute or two, and you say, you know what, the best way to really experience this is to really come in for a tour. And I think most of us on this phone call that would agree that that's really not the way to handle your sales process. We all should have a sales process, and we should use that sales process whether we're talking about the web contact, we're talking about a phone, or we're even talking about the tour. But about 45% actually asked for that close. Now, believe me, I'm not against closing. I love that whole, always be closing kind of concept. But I think you got to build rapport and do some discovery prior to trying to ask them to come in for the tour. And then this last bullet here. When I'm speaking at conferences, I try to throw out as much information as I can so people can walk away with the nuggets, kind of like what we're doing today. But one of the things, they say, hey, what are 3 takeaways, Mike, that can help us move that needle, our closing ratio needle immediately? And what I would tell with them, and what a lot of experienced trainers in the industry would tell you, is to follow up. And not just follow up with, hey, have you sold your house yet? Or, oh, how's this family? But really that creative, that personal follow-up. Sometimes just following up, sending a card or a note, just saying, you know what, I was thinking about you. Something like that so that you're fresh on their mind. But the percentage of sales that follow up 1 to 3 times after the tour is 80%, and they stop. After that, most of us are taking that, put it into the cold bucket or the C list category, or something like that. Only about 5% of salespeople follow up, more than 5 times. And I think we all agree that you got to follow up 5, 10, even more than that to get a prospect to move to become a resident. So, saying that, I'm going to move to our next poll question. Andrea, if you could cue that up, that'd be great.
Terrific. Our next poll question is, if you do have a mystery shopping program in place, do you select one of the following: hire an outside company to conduct the shops, have EDs call other community teams and cross-shop, or have an administrator or corporate person conduct the shops? So let's go ahead and everybody put a vote in for the poll. And we've got about half the folks have voted. And we're getting there. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and launch the results. So get your answers in. Perfect. I think we got everybody. Okay. So for those folks who do have a mystery shopping program in place, 58% of our attendees hire an outside company to conduct the shops. 27% have an administrator or a corporate person to conduct the shops, and then 18% have EDs call other community teams and cross shop. Mike, is one better than the other, or do they have different purposes?
Well, you're asking a mystery shopping vendor, so I'm obviously going to go with the 58% that outsource it, and we do get probably I'd say 10 to 15% of our business from those companies like yourselves who said, hey, we do it internally, our ED does it, or something like that, and the reason why is because when you start talking about managing the process and really doing the whole process of the mystery shopping, it's a difficult process, and even a lot of our clients who leave other mystery shopping companies and come to us is because they felt like, hey, we had to manage the vendor too much. If you think about the amount of time that you spend, doing internal shops and analyzing and doing all that. And you look how cost-effective mystery shopping really is, and the reporting platform, and how you can use that to see an overall view of your entire company. You just kind of weigh the pros and cons. What I will say is that the fact that you're doing something, whether it's outsourced or you're doing it in-house, my hat's off to all of you, because at least you're doing something. And I want to say one other thing, and actually has to do with the last slide. I wanted to bring it up. We talked about the mystery shop findings. We did some research a few years ago, and if you've gone to conferences or heard other speakers, maybe you've heard these statistics. But we lose 70 to 80% of our prospects over the phone, and people look like, "No, Mike, you're crazy." Well, it's true, because what we found in this lost lead study is that prospects, and they start doing the research on the web, and then they start calling. They'll depend on the location, but they'll typically call 7 to 10 places, but they're only going to go visit normally 2 to 3 of those. So when they pick up that phone to call you, they're really not looking for a reason to come and visit you. They're looking for a reason not to visit you, because they got to narrow down their list from 7 down to like 2 or 3. So, when you take the tool of mystery shopping and any other tool that you're using to evaluating your sales process, the great thing is that you don't have to do anything large and make any major changes. Sometimes if you just tweak just a couple little things, that in itself will make all the difference, and maybe increase, definitely will increase that ratio from inquiry to visit. But so we're gonna move along, and let's talk about the intent of mystery shopping. And here's, in our mind, at least in Eyes of Primo Solutions, this is how we build it. Mystery shopping is a tool. It is there as a place to get a baseline of your sales talent, your sales counselors, as well as your sales process. I mean, if you're investing the money, we invest all this money in lead generation, and I won't even get into statistics on the amount of leads that we're actually losing, but we invest all that money in those leads. Yet I find I'm actually surprised sometimes on the little amount of money that we invest in our salespeople. We're paying them decent money, sometimes really good money. We're asking them to work very, very hard at what they're doing and to be committed and to be passionate. Yet many companies don't invest in their development. But it is that baseline to see where they're at and what they need to further develop. And that goes into the staff development. And lastly, I like to say it's a force for good. We talk about, I said initially, you get that fear, anxiety, because like they're trying to catch me doing something wrong. But really, it is a positive tool. Yeah, we're going to try to identify areas where there's opportunity, but also you learn that, we also want to find those things that you're doing right, because you want to continue doing those things right, get better at those, but also work on the areas of opportunity. What it is not is, it is not that eye in the sky program. It's not a big brother watching you, trying to spotlight everything that you're doing wrong. And lastly, we have had some companies call us up and say, so Mike, we'd like you to do just this one mystery shop on this individual. They pretty much got one foot out the door, and based on this mystery shop, this could be the determination factor of whether or not we're going to get rid of them. And we just won't do that. I'm not saying that it's not done, but we will not provide a mystery shop, if we know ahead of time that, hey, this is what the reasons are for. It shouldn't be for employment purposes. It shouldn't be for termination purposes. It should be about developing your staff. I've got a military background. I believe that most issues can be resolved through training. So, in order to prepare, these are the steps now. If you are taking on a mystery shopping program, is to prepare your team. So, let them know you're rolling out a mystery shopping program. Know the laws, and part of that is, having them sign a TAPE consent form. You only have to do that in 12 states, but our recommendation is always, hey, have them sign it, make it part of your new hire packet. But let them know, let them be part of the process. Let them see the scorecard that's going on. And just so you know, as far as the law is concerned, if you have any communities in Nevada, maybe you know this, maybe you don't, you have to have a private investigator's license to do any type of mystery shopping in the state of Nevada. So if you're working with the company or you're doing it yourself, just know that that's a little below the law. Bring in the executive director. Don't know if we have any EDs or administrators on the phone right now, but bring them in. Whenever I'm doing coaching or training, I definitely want to spend time with the ED. I want to get the ED on my side. The ED is the sales manager as well as the CEO of the community. But I want that person who's in line, knows what the process is, and that can be there also as a resource for you.
Hey, Mike.
And then, yes.
When you say include the executive director, so would you have that executive director actually sit in on the review? What role should they play?
Yeah, well, we'll talk a little bit about that in another slide, but that is a good question. Yes, if the ED is available to be in that review process, absolutely. My thought is that the more the ED can be involved in the sales process, the better. But my experience is that most EDs, most administrators, have 100 other things that they're doing. They're wearing multiple hats, and they're continuously putting out fires other places. So it normally falls on the sales and sometimes even the regional to police that. But yeah, good question. And this is going to be our last poll. And Andre, go ahead and cue that up if you will.
Okay, doke. So this is the last poll. And what is the primary reason you conduct mystery shops? Select one or more of the following: to identify training opportunities, to evaluate talent, to evaluate backup and MOD team as part of the review process, and to evaluate the effectiveness of a sales training program. So that you're answering what is the primary reason you would conduct a mystery shop, and you can select one or more of the following. We also had a question pop up. Someone asked how many people are attending. So to put it in perspective of the voting, we have 26 attendees on this webinar today. And someone else wanted to see the results again of question number 2. We're going to be sending out a link tomorrow to review the recorded webinar, and you'll be able to take a look at the previous polls and the numbers there. So we almost have everybody voted. Give it 2 more seconds. And we're going to go ahead and close the poll. Okay, so the primary reason you conduct mystery shops, number 1, this will be music to your ears, Mike, to identify training opportunities at 83%. Number 2 is to evaluate the effectiveness of a sales training program at 58%. To evaluate the backup MOD team at 33%, to evaluate talent 25%, and as part of the review process at 17%.
Well, just to provide just a little bit of comment on this, as you can tell, there really is no wrong answer to conduct a mystery shop. Whatever reason that you're using it for, I commend, like I said, I commended you previously on the fact that you're actually doing the mystery shop. I do believe that the primary reason to do it is to identify those training and coaching opportunities. But when you talk about backup teams, that's the reason we do nights and weekend shops. That's why clients hire us. They want to know, hey, how's the phone being answered? How's the lead being handled? From that backup team to the actual sales counselor. And yes, I think to evaluate the effectiveness of the sales training, I think that kind of ties in with identifying training opportunities and all that. A lot of companies out there invest a lot of money in trainers and coaches. And the idea is, if a company was to hire me to come in and do training and coaching, and they're going to pay that amount of money and invest that in me, invest that actually in the company and you, they want to know that the folks that are being trained are actually implementing the training. So the mystery shopping is that great tool that's able to be used to say, hey, is this particular area of this training process being implemented, or where do we need to go back, and where do we need to send that coach in to really focus in and fine tune on that training process. So thank you all for participating in that. The next key is to, for those who are thinking about rolling it out in mystery shop program, those who are currently doing it, but one of the things that we struggle with especially new clients coming on board is, man, they just want to I feel like they want to evaluate everything, and they have like 100 different questions or something, which makes it way too long. Have kind of know what your expectations are, what outcomes you want to get, your key performance indicators that you actually want to measure, and focus developing that shopper, we call it the questionnaire, on what you want to get out of that, because that's what you're going to be using as far as coaching, and what that measuring stick that you're going to be using to measure the effectiveness of the training. And I love the quote that you can't expect it if you don't measure it. So for those out there who aren't doing any mystery shopping, haven't been mystery shopped, and if you happen to be in a leadership position, you can't expect your salespeople to be doing certain things if you have provided them with the resources to do it. And that's the only thing that I would say is, put something into place to where you can measure those outcomes, measure the effectiveness of your training program. And really quick, for example, if we were talking about, first impressions as a key performance indicator, the number of rings. Sometimes there's some companies out there that says, hey, we want the phone to ring no more than twice or no more than 3 times. What's the greeting like? Is it upbeat? Was I put on the hold? How long was I put on hold? The building rapport, as far as, did they ask for the prospect's name? Did they use the name throughout? What kind of questions were asked? Those are just kind of things to think about, and those are also things that we help you develop if you were working with our company. We don't just say, hey, give us your key KPIs. We work with you through those and develop a custom questionnaire for you.
So Mike, your mystery shops are specific to kind of what the client wants to measure, and so you kind of really design it based on what they're trying to accomplish and what their KPIs are?
Yeah, actually, every one of our clients have a different, we call them shopper surveys, shopper reports, the questionnaire that the shopper is going to be filling out. Everyone are different because they're customized on the sales training process, but not just sales training, but there are certain needs, certain requests, certain things that maybe that particular company is looking for. We've had people ask us over the years, like, hey, have you benchmarked this? Have you we can go in there and we kind of benchmark certain, like, hey, what's the percentage or what's the benchmark on the number of rings or this. But as most of you know, it's impossible to benchmark unless you are benchmarking very like items. And because there are so many differences, and not only that, some of our clients weight their questions. So maybe they're only worth 1 question, but if one's like, hey, this one we really need to work on, they may make it worth 5 points. So if you get it, great, skews it high. If not, it skews it low. So even then, it's difficult to really benchmark because it is so customized. And that is kind of part of our different and better story as well. So moving along. So you think about, all right, we got the training, we got the coaching. Training, coaching, obviously two different things. The way I look at training and coaching is this. I look at training as, hey, I can go and I can do an on-site training for a couple of days. And if you left it at that, just like whether it's a conference or speaking engagement, most people forget 70-75% of what they've heard, like within the first 72 to about 72 hours, unless they actually implement it. So training to me is like, hey, here's the process that we're going to use. Here's what it looks like. It's a shotgun blast to everybody. Coaching comes in and starts, defining and not just defining, but actually refining some of those skills and targeting in specifically on the individuals. So, a study was conducted not too long ago. I can't remember who exactly did it, but the study showed that and with top performers, it revealed that coaching and accountability were the most cited reasons for their dramatic improvement when compared to their peers. So, as in comparison to you and others in your company, even in the industry, is that coaching, that accountability piece. And that's where that accountability piece, to me, is kind of where the ED comes in. And the coaching, I'm not saying necessarily it should be the ED, but it should be regional if it's going to be in-house, or like I said, outsource it. And good companies, good leaders, they know where that balance is at. They know, hey, do we do this in-house, or does it make sense to outsource it to free us up to do the things that we should be doing as regionals and as leaders? And to me, I think the two types of coaching and analysis, and you see those on the slide. There's that self-analysis and a leadership-driven. And we're getting close to being finished with this webinar, but I'll go over this real quick. When you're talking about the self-analysis, first of all, you should have a score sheet. And when I say self-analysis, this would be you as a sales counselor. You have a score sheet it's not scored, but it mirrors what the shopper has scored. So it allows you to kind of go and score yourself. And for the purpose of this, and it takes some time, so think about that. You need to listen to that shop at least 3 times, and we're talking about phone shops here. And that first time that you go through is really just you want to listen to the entire shop, and then after you're done listening, go back and score yourself. Now, our shoppers will, whenever they're scoring, they'll go back and listen to the shop while they're scoring to make sure for accuracy. But I think if you want to get a good prospect feel, you listen to it, then go back and score. Then the second one is where you really kind of dig in. You listen to the shop. You stop the recording at certain points and say, hey, they asked this question. I should have dug in a little bit more. For example, if they ask about security, and you say, well, our community has a security guard 24/7. I know we don't use the word security. I'm just throwing that out there. And then we move on to the next topic or the next question. When really, that's been a good opportunity to dig down and say, they asked about, in our minds, we're thinking, they asked about security. There's got to be a reason why they asked about that. There's what's the importance behind that? And dig in and peel back those layers and find out why that's important to them. Listen for words or hints, keywords or hints that prospects use. When prospects throw out certain things, when they throw out objections, those are all things that, man, we should be just keying in on, focusing on, to be digging in and asking more questions about. Also, listen at the type of questions you're asking. If you're asking a closed-in question, or something like something on the top of my head. Does mom want a 1 or 2 bedroom? That's kind of a closed-in question. It's like, oh, 1 bedroom, and you move on to the next question. But you could rephrase that question. So what's mom's current living conditions, or what kind of living conditions are you looking for mom when she moves to a new community? Something like that gets the prospect opening more. Think about how many times did you use the prospect's name? Do you feel like, think about the idea that, hey, did I build enough trust and rapport to ask those personal questions? There's some personal questions I think that we all should ask, but I think we need to earn the right to ask them. And the other thing maybe to think about is, did you earn the right to ask for the close? And I believe that. I believe that you need to earn the right to ask for the close. Now, saying that, whether you earn the right or not, you still ask for the close. But I think as you go through the sales process, you've done it in a way that you've earned the right to ask for that close. And then the third time, and normally this is either my fourth or fifth time whenever I'm doing an analysis, go through and calculate the amount of time you talked and listened. So literally like, okay, I'm talking here, how many seconds was that? And put that in a spreadsheet, whatever, calculate it. That way you can determine that talk versus listen ratio. And then lastly, that last bullet, then compare your analysis with the shopper report. And this could be one of that areas where the ED could come in and be involved. This would be where the regional can come in involved. Or it could be just you doing it yourself. And what I've found, we work with a number of large companies, and with only a short number of regionals, they don't have the opportunity to listen to every shop and go to every person and actually do the coaching. So they have them do the self-analysis. And then maybe they send the report into their regional or to their ED. But if possible, and if I have regionals, EDs on the phone, the ideal situation would be to sit down with the sales counselor. But going back to this thing with the self-analysis, I believe that we are harder on ourselves than our ED or our sales, our regional or VPs can be on ourselves. So self-analysis is certainly a great tool to analyze it. From a leadership-driven, it's, to me, that's kind of it's that combination. It's like I still think a self-analysis is still good, but if it's just a leadership-driven, they go through, they're listening, they're evaluating the shop, and then they're sitting down. This is for all you leaders on there. This is the big thing. It's really not about the score. Score is great to have, so you can trend and track that through time. But also the scores could change. The questions could change on the survey. They could affect the scoring. The weighting could. So it's not that big of a deal. But for a salesperson, it's huge, right? I mean, you're like, oh my God, I just got a 75. What did I do wrong? I'll share with you the average score on a phone shop in our databases is in the mid-70s. A lot of companies, it hits the ceiling of their 90s. But the idea is not to focus on the score. It's to focus on those things that can change behaviors, the comments that maybe the shopper have put on there. Because our shoppers, we say, hey, put yourself in the shoes of a prospect. How do you feel? How would you have felt if you were actually really doing this? And a lot of our shoppers are truly people that are looking for a loved one, for community. Also, start with a positive. And I'm telling you, if you're doing self-analysis, don't just, I'm one of these guys like, all right, if I speak, and say I speak to 1,000 people, and I get 1,000 feedback forms, and 995 of them are positive, and I got 5 of them that aren't so positive, my intention is like, okay, I got to go to those 5 and see what I did wrong, what could I have done to change. I've had to retrain myself and go through, let me look at some of the positive things that I did first, and then go back and look at those negatives, see what could I have done to change or to tweak this, maybe to kind of win them over or to change the results. Definitely keep it conversational, and this is just, it's not just a one-way conversation. The legendary basketball coach, John Wooden, I love the quote that he has. It says, a coach is someone who can give correction without causing resentment. So in coaching, the really best way to challenge your employees is to ask good coaching questions. I know I've got adult children now, and when they come in and ask me for advice, my middle one especially asks me for a lot of advice. He doesn't ask me questions of this, and I don't say, hey, here's what I would do. I started asking him questions because the idea is I want him to start talking. I want him to start thinking about and really coming up with what he thinks would be the best solution and just thinking through that process. So examples of those questions, what led to your improvement in this particular area? What behaviors can you adopt? What can you do to make sure you remember to use the prospect's name? Those kind of questions. And then lastly, and here's a big mistake that a lot of companies make, is even those that are implementing a new sales process, and they start doing mystery shopping. They want to go in and try to fix everything. If you go in and try to fix everything, or even if you take a new sales process and you try to do everything right in that sales process, you will fail miserably and you'll go back to your old ways. So find just 1 or 2 of those key areas that you think that you can drill in and focus on and say, hey, keep doing like what you normally do. Don't change your focus except for these two areas, and drill in and focus on those. Then the next time you do that mystery shop, hopefully you'll see some results. You'll not only just in the mystery shop, but maybe even some closing ratios. You see that needle move. But like I said, like eating an elephant, take small bites at a time. And wow, we got through that pretty quick. I didn't realize we was coming up. Right now, we'll open it up for Q&A, and then Andre, you can share some of the special offering.
Great, Mike. So just to remind everybody, if you have any questions, you can enter in the questions in the questions pane on your panel on the right-hand side. We had a couple of questions come in during your presentation, Mike. One of them is, how do you start the conversation when giving the feedback?
So from like a regional or ED's perspective, I'm assuming.
Yeah, so to your point, it's not, a beating and you want to make it a positive leadership. So I guess the question is, how do you start that conversation?
Yeah, I think it goes back to that bullet where it says, start off with something positive. And to me, it's if we're pointing out, let's say we're pointing out a negative, like, hey, you know what? You never even asked for the prospects. You never even asked for the caller's name, on this call. Instead of just jumping in and me as a regional saying, hey, listen here, Sally, you need to start asking for the caller's name and use it. I mean, you didn't even ask one time. There was no report. Instead of saying, you know what, Sally, this was a really good call, even if it was an awful call. All right, but this was a really good call. We found some things that you did really well. We found some areas where we can actually work on and talk to. And let's talk about a couple of things that we saw that went really well, and then transition those things where we think that we can improve on. But like I said, start positive, because if you just start hammering people from the get-go, if you did that with me, if I did that with my kids, they would turn me off, immediately. I wouldn't be able to get through them. But everybody loves to be complimented. And like I said, when you're doing those mystery shops, when you're on the other end of that shop, you feel that fear, that anxiety, like, oh my gosh, did I do okay? Or are they going to be disappointed? As a leader, it's our responsibility to turn that around, let them know, hey, we care about you. That's why we're doing this. We care about your staff development. Here's some great things that you did, but here's a couple things that you want to work on.
So, Mike, it's also a part of, I guess, the culture of the company, in that they want to express it as it being a positive and seeing what opportunities for training. How should a company explain just the process to their salespeople so that they don't kind of get defensive?
Well, here's unfortunately, I feel like there's a stigma out there that when we talk about mystery shopping, that it is, most people feel like it is that eye in the sky, the big brother. As leaders in companies, regionals, whoever you might be, you're about to ready to roll this out, or even if you haven't rolled out, but especially that you're trying to roll it out, it's probably going to be lip service at first. Just manage your expectations, but the sales counselors are probably like, I've heard this before. I've worked in other companies and they said the same thing, and it never was. They just beat us up over this. They spotlighted the weakness. They made us just feel like we were less than what we really were. What's really going to shine through, you need to send that message that, yep, it is staff development. We do care about you. It is about professional development. We're going to coach you. We're going to bring in coaches. We're going to do this to further your staff development. But leaders, if there's leaders out there, and if there's those of you that need a message to the leaders, you should tell them, like, hey, I heard what you said. Now back it up. When you as sales counselors, when you start seeing, I think when sales counselors start seeing that, hey, they're not beating me up. Hey, they're not looking for a reason to get rid of me. My job isn't threatened. They really are trying to help me. They're trying to help me be successful. That's when I think the culture will start changing. Lip service alone won't do it. It would be the actions of the leadership in the company. Great.
Okay. Another question that came in: what other tools would you recommend to use when coaching?
Yeah. So if it's okay I normally don't do this, but I'll mention a couple tools that we use, with our company. A couple of the major ones. First of all, is what we call our post-tour digital comment cards. And there's not many companies out there that are doing it. It's fairly new. We've been doing it for a couple years. But now what it is after a tour, we create this branded, if you will, kind of like a short online survey, like 4 or 5 questions, to send out to that prospect and ask them what their experience was like. And these are like your outcomes. What was your experience? What can we do to improve it? Are you planning on moving in? Why or why not? And would you recommend somebody to our community? Why or why not? And it's you get the results in real time. It's an opportunity for you to follow up and maybe overcome some objections. It's been a great tool. It's been very successful with our clients that are using it. The other one is call tracking and recording, which has been around for a long time. Most of you know it, if there's any marketers on here, is you put a different phone number on different marketing collateral, so brochures or advertisements and newspaper ads. That way, when the call comes in, first of all, as a marketer, you can identify, hey, this is the source that it came from, so you can find out your return on your investment. And by putting the money in the right marketing places, if I run this ad every week but I'm not getting anything from it, why would I keep putting money there? But second of all, they record your calls. And now the complaint I hear all the time from companies that are using these services is that, but we got to cycle through all of these calls to try to figure out which one's a sales call. Our system literally allows you to filter through so you can see just those sales calls. And now you can actually listen to live prospects. The other thing that I think we do that nobody else does, if I'm wrong, you can send me an email and tell me I'm wrong. But we actually also allow you to record outgoing calls. So on those follow-up calls, and if you want, personally, if you want to see, hey, how do I sound on this outgoing call? Am I getting the message across? And supervisors, another way to coach and train. So two very popular tools. One is fairly new, the other one that's been around for a while.
Great, Mike. We have time for one more question. When would you use a phone mystery shop and an in-person mystery shop?
Here's what I would say. If you have the budget and if you went through and you did your calculations on how much a lead costs, what it's costing your organization to have an empty apartment or whatever, you realize that with most of the time, with one additional move-in, will more than pay for a full comprehensive mystery shopping program, from web to telephone to in-person, nights and weekends phone shops. So to answer your question, I think if you're going to do a mystery shopping program, you roll out a full comprehensive. But based on your budget, you do your phone and in-person. And then even if your budget's even tight and you still want to do both, maybe you do a phone and in-person I'll call them combos together on a quarterly basis. But then on those months that you're not doing a phone in person, maybe you do business phone, or you do nights and weekends or something like that. You alternate them. But if you're talking about, hey, I want to do phone and in person, and that's it, of course, I would still strongly recommend adding the web piece in there, the contact form, because that's a big part of our lead generation. I would recommend doing those on a minimum, at least on a quarterly basis.
Terrific. So that's all the time we have today. Mike, thank you so much. If you have any other questions, you can reach out to Mike directly at Mike Miller at PrimoSolutionsLLC.com. Once you leave today's webinar, you'll receive a survey on the presentation, and we'd appreciate if you complete that and provide your feedback. You'll also receive a follow-up email within 24 hours with a link to view a recording of today's webinar, a copy of the presentation, and some handouts. On behalf of Senior Living Smart and Primo Solutions, we thank you for joining us today and hope you have a great rest of your day. And just a reminder, our next webinar, Innovation in Senior Living Lead Generation, will be at 1 o'clock on Friday, October 21st. And we look forward to seeing everyone there. Have a great day, and thank you, everyone.